Welcome to the Workplace Minute, powered by H3HR Advisors and sponsored by Workhuman. Thanks for joining me for a quick update on what's important in the world of work. My name is Steve Boese. Today in the Workplace Minute, we're talking about a form of caregiving that almost never shows up in HR strategy discussions, benefits design, or leadership conversations, but for millions of workers, it's very real. And it's pet caregiving. And before this sounds like a lighter or less serious topic, the reality is pet ownership is now deeply embedded in the everyday life for a majority of American workers. Let's break it down. In the United States, roughly 2/3 of households, that's 87 million families or so, own a pet. That means it's not a niche issue or a fringe concern. It's something that's directly shaping the daily routines, responsibilities, and stress levels of a large portion of the workforce. But what has changed over time is not just the number of people who own pets, but the role those pets play in their lives. Over the past decade, and especially coming out of the pandemic years, pets have become much more central to how people experience home, family, and emotional well-being. For many of us, pets are not just companions, they're a core part of our household. And this shift is often described as the humanization of pets, where owners invest in their pet's health, comfort, and happiness in ways that closely are how they would care for, say, a child or another close family member. And when you view it through that lens, it becomes much easier to understand why pet caregiving is not a trivial matter to people and employees, especially if it's overlooked by employers. The financial impact alone is significant and growing. Americans are now spending well over $150 billion annually on their pets, and at an individual level, the cost can add up quickly. For dog owners, annual costs can exceed $2,500 a year, and while cat owners spend about $1,500 or more each year. And those figures represent just the routine levels of care, food, grooming, regular vet visits. And when unexpected medical issues arise for pets, the burden increases dramatically. Many pet owners report emergency veterinarian expenses ranging from hundreds to maybe even several $1,000s, and a substantial number are not financially prepared for those kinds of situations. In some cases, research even suggests that pet owners are spending as much or more on their pet's health than on their own health, which highlights just how serious this responsibility has become. But the impact of pet caregiving is not just financial. It also shows up in how employees spend their time, how they manage their schedules, and how they experience stress during the workday. Caring for a pet often involves coordinating vet appointments, managing chronic health conditions, arranging care during travel, and responding to unexpected issues that require immediate attention. And for employees with demanding jobs or rigid schedules, these responsibilities can create real tension. Think about the employee who has a dog recovering from surgery, or a pet that requires medication multiple times a day, or even just the challenge of ensuring a pet is not left alone for extended periods when returning to the office more frequently. These aren't hypothetical scenarios. They are everyday realities for many workers. This is where the connection to work becomes much more direct. Some studies suggest that employees are willing to change jobs, accept different roles, or make career trade-offs in order to better accommodate their pet care needs. Others report distraction, stress, or reduced focus during the workday when they're concerned about their pets at home. And while this may not always be openly discussed in the workplace, it's still influencing behavior, decision-making, and overall employee experience in meaningful ways. And what makes this moment particularly interesting is that some employers are beginning to recognize these shifts. A recent CNBC article highlights how certain organizations are starting to expand backup care benefits for pets. These have traditionally focused on children or elder care, and now they're including pets. That's a notable signal. It does not mean that every company is going to suddenly offer pet stipends or cover veterinary bills, but it does suggest that leading employers are starting to think more broadly about what caregiving actually looks like in today's workforce. And that broader perspective is where HR and business leaders should be focusing their attention. This is not about turning workplaces into pet-centric environments or over-indexing on one specific benefit category. It's just about recognizing that employees' definitions of family and caregiving have evolved, and that those definitions now include responsibilities that were not always part of traditional HR thinking. Ignoring that shift doesn't make it go away. It just creates a disconnect between what employees are experiencing and what employers are acknowledging. So what can organizations realistically do in response? The first and most impactful lever remains flexibility. Flexible work arrangements, autonomy over scheduling, and a degree of trust in how employees manage their time can go a really long way in supporting all types of caregivers, including those caring for their pets. When employees simply have the ability to step away for a vet appointment or handle an unexpected situation without friction, it reduces stress and builds trust without requiring complex new programs at all. And beyond flexibility, there are other opportunities to offer targeted, optional supports. Voluntary benefits such as pet insurance, access to pet care services, or partnerships with providers can be relatively low-cost ways to acknowledge these needs. These types of benefits do not need to be universal or mandatory to be effective. Even offering them as an option signals to employees that the organization understands and respects the realities employees are navigating. Equally important, though, is the cultural dimension. How managers and leaders respond to these situations matter, as just as much as the benefits themselves. If an employee is dealing with a sick pet, is that treated with empathy and understanding, or is it dismissed as something insignificant? For many employees, these moments are emotionally charged and meaningful. The way organizations respond can either reinforce a sense of trust and support or create more distance and frustration. And this is where the broader takeaway comes into focus. In a time when organizations are dealing with economic pressures, rapid technological change, and evolving workforce expectations, pet caregiving might seem like a secondary or even minor issue. But for the employees experiencing it, it's anything but minor. It's emotional, it's stressful, and it has a direct impact on how they show up at work. If you're serious about employee experience, well-being, and retention, you should take a more expansive view of caregiving. That means looking beyond traditional categories and understanding the full range of responsibilities your employees are managing in their lives. Because for a significant portion of your workforce, pet caregiving is not a side issue, it's part of their daily reality. And increasingly, it's a part of their work stories as well. That's it for today's Workplace Minute. Thanks so much for listening, and a big thank you to Workhuman for supporting the Workplace Minute. If this episode made you think about how your organization can think more expansively about employee benefits, please share it with a colleague. I'm Steve Boese, and this has been the Workplace Minute from H3 HR Advisors.